Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to webinar number 4 with David Lund on financial literacy. We are going to start off by saying that, again, if you want to email me your questions or your comments, you can if the chat function is not working for some reason. And we don't have a visual of David today, but we can hear him and we can see his presentation. So hopefully you will get a lot out of today. And I will hand it over to David.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Carrie. It's great to be with you all again, and I hope everyone had a great May Victoria Day long weekend, May 2-4 weekend. Anyways, here in the States, so we have Memorial Day this weekend, so it's our long weekend. But anyways, let's get on with today's webinar number 4, which is on managing labor and productivity. And I'm really excited about the chapter today because we're going to be getting into more of the operational side of life. And I think a lot of you will be able to see things that you can do immediately inside of your hotels when you look at what I have to present today. So just looking back in the last 3 weeks, we did webinar 1, which is really an introduction to financial leadership and really putting it in the right perspective. Nobody expects or wants you to become an accountant. We just want you to be able to understand how to drive the car. So to use that analogy, you don't need to know how to fix the car. You just need to know how to drive it. That's really what financial leadership is about. The second webinar, we talked about the basic principles of business, that they're universal, that they apply to the hotel business. We talked about the difference between the accrual and the cash basis of accounting, and it's really the accrual basis that we want to be able to use. We talked about why we do things the way we do and who uses the information. Talked about lots and lots of terms and definitions. And then webinar 3, we talked about specifically about GAAP and about the uniform system of accounts for the lodging industry. And then we got into the proper presentation of the income statement, the balance sheet. We did the fundamental accounting equation where we talked about how assets equal liabilities less owner's equity. And then we would get into hotel financial statements specifically and some of the applications and the things that should be properly displayed inside of statements. And today we're talking about labor and productivity. But always remember there'll be a copy of the deck available after the presentation. I'll send it to all of you. As Carrie said, use the chat for the polls, questions, and answers. I love getting your questions. So if you think of something during the presentation, and you can send it to Carrie at any time. She'll collect those and we can ask them at the end. And even if you have any comments on any of the things that we've gone over and you want to get that out there, by all means. So remember, the purpose for this webinar series is to increase your financial leadership skills. You have a huge part to play in the success of your property, no matter what your position. Numbers aren't scary. We just think they are. And you can have a lot of impact in your job, with your career, by bringing this into your world. And I invite you to play full out and participate. And remember, always shift your thinking. This is not accounting. Shift it to learning and curiosity and growing your abilities. You're going to have greater career success if you do. So play full out today. So always remember this as well. It's not accounting, it's business thinking. And it's not the hard part of hospitality like a lot of people tend to think it is. So polling question number 1, right off the bat. What is the number 1 largest expense we have in the hotel business? And it's a multiple choice. Respond in the chat. A, if you think it's food. B, if you think it's laundry costs. C, if you think it's alcohol. Or D, if you think it's payroll. What is the largest single expense we have in the hotel business? We're going to come back to those answers in a few minutes, but please submit those now. A for food, B for laundry, C for alcohol, or D for payroll. All right. So if we were building cars, and I know we're not, we're running hotels, but if we were building cars, we would want to know how many hours it takes to make a car. And we would be constantly innovating to reduce the amount of time it takes to make a car. And that's exactly how the car industry functions. Every year you'll notice with your car that things are different because they're re-engineering them all the time to save material costs, but also save labor. Labor is probably the biggest component in manufacturing a car, the cost of the labor. We would constantly be innovating. And in the hotel business, it's no different. We're exactly the same. We might not think about it like we're producing cars, but when we get into the presentation here, you're going to see that it's the same. So what is productivity? Well, productivity is simply output divided by input equals productivity. So if you have your output, which is in our business, covers and rooms occupied, or arrivals and departures, whatever you want to call it, and you divide it by your input, which is the number of hours it takes to actually prepare that meal or service that room or check in that room, we have our productivity. And it's the effectiveness of the effort, especially in industry. Our industry is the same as the car industry, and it's measured in the terms of the rate of output per unit of input. So that's simply what it is. Output divided by input equals the productivity. A really famous economist, Mr. Peter Drucker, coined this phrase: you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And if you think about it for a second, that is just so simple, but so true. Of course, you can't manage what you can't measure. If you can't tell me what the result is, and if you can't tell me the result of your effort was equal to or better or worse than the goal or the last time you did it, then what's the point? You need to be able to measure. That's just at the very heart of understanding why we need productivity measurements, because we want to be successful and we want to be able to know that we're successful. We want to be able to demonstrate that to people as well. A couple of other economists have chimed in on this, and they realize that what you measure improves. So Pearson's law basically says that what you measure and report on improves exponentially. So in other words, if we're reporting on labor, if we're measuring labor and we actually send out a daily report, it's going to help improve our results. And then there's Monson's law. He says when performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured and reported back, the rate of improvement accelerates. So in other words, if we have productivity measurements and targets inside of our business, and those are collected and reported and reviewed on a regular basis inside of our hotels and companies, that's even going to help us get better. Which again, when you think about it, it just makes sense. It's kind of like your report card. Nobody wants to go home with a bad report card, right? So when we report the information, when we review it inside of our companies, things improve. So in our world, the hotel world, it's exactly the same. And to illustrate the point, if we're working in a 75-room hotel and it's operating at 75% occupancy, which is a reasonable occupancy for an annualized number for a hotel in a normal period of time, not now, that produces 20,000 units of rooms production. In other words, a 75-room hotel that operates at 75% sells 20,000 room nights. Same in food and beverage. If we take a 50-seat restaurant that does 3 turns a day, it produces 55,000 units of customer cover production every single year. That's more than enough to measure our productivity. So why would we bother to track productivity in the rooms department, you may be asking? Well, for me, in a former life, I tracked these statistics along with many others. And the rooms productivity inside of the company that I worked for that had at that time 60 hotels, the productivity ranged from a low of 1.42 hours per room occupied to a high of 2.09. Now you might be thinking, wow, that's a really big variance, but that's the reality. And obviously the hotel that was operating at 1.42 was doing some things that were much better than the one that was running at 2.09. So in a limited service operation, it's probably closer to 1 or 1.25 hours per room occupied. It might even be below 1 hour per room occupied. And then the reason why is because there's fewer services. You don't have bellman, you don't have doorman, you don't have concierge services sometimes. So it's lower. And again, we're just talking about the rooms division here. Back to our P&L review from last week when we looked at the actual rooms department. There are things that belong in there and there are things that don't, but those things that belong in there produce a rooms profit. So 75 room hotel at 75% occupancy equals exactly 20,531 units. So let's ask ourselves, what would a 5% decline or improvement be worth? Well, 5% of 20,000 hours is 1,026 hours. And that multiplied by $25 an hour, which is a reasonable wage rate with benefits, that's $25,500. That's just from the rooms department. And that's just 5%. So what if it was 10% or 20% actually that we could improve the productivity if we were tracking it? And I always tell people, hospitality is a game of inches. There's no holy grail you're going to find that's going to save the day. There are 1,000 things you need to be on top of. Measuring your productivity is one of the key ones. So same in food and beverage. In a former life, when we tracked the results inside of our company and produced the benchmarking reports, the F&B productivity ranged from 0.52 hours per customer cover to 0.94. That's almost 100% variance. How could something seemingly as similar as serving food be so upside down? So in a limited service operation, you're probably somewhere in the same range because we're doing the same things. We're cooking the food, we're serving the food. And in that 50-seat restaurant with 3 turns produces 54,750 covers. If we could find a 5% improvement, that equals 2,700 hours for the year. That times our $25 an hour with benefit is $68,000 in savings. What if it was worth 10 or 20%? So imagine for you, if you're the food and beverage manager in your hotel and you can find a way to increase the productivity by 10%, look at how much money that would be. That would be over $100,000 in savings. And the great thing about productivity is you can actually prove to someone that these are the savings because of the way we measure it. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So the productivity measurements are like your car's speedometer and tachometer. And I know there's like an automobile theme ringing through here. I am kind of a car nut, but so the two measurements we're going to be talking about, our productivity measurement and our EFTE measurement, they're like the speedometer and the tachometer in your car, because you need both of these in your sports car to know how your car is performing, because you can be going really slow from a speed point of view, but your engine can be going very fast. Or you can also be going very fast speed-wise, and your engine can actually be running very low. So we need both to determine how we're operating. So here we go. Let's look at the productivity math. It's really straightforward. And again, you're going to get a copy of the deck so you can actually play with this. Part of the exercise we're going to do today, you're going to be playing with this. You're going to see how straightforward it is. So what we're talking about are calculating EFTEs and productivity. So what is an EFTE? Well, EFTE is an acronym, and it stands for Equivalent Full-Time Employee. And it's a statistic, and it's used by all kinds of different industries. And what it is it takes a look at the number of hours we work, and it takes a look at the number of all of the hours that people work inside of our business. All the different types of positions we have: managers, hourly, full-time, part-time, union, non-union. It doesn't matter. It doesn't discriminate in any way, shape, or form. All it's interested in is the number of hours worked, not the number of hours paid, not vacation hours, not stat hours, just the hours worked. So the measurement is based on the notion, the idea that a person works 40 hours a week for 52 weeks a year. But we all know that no one works for 52 weeks. We all have vacation, we all have time off. But taking a look at this, it's what we use as the basis for establishing productivity. And here's how the math works. 40 hours is a full-time equivalent week of work. And I know a lot of people, when I present them with this, say, well, David, in hospitality, we work a lot more than 40 hours. That really doesn't matter, because all we're looking for is the equivalent, full-time equivalent. So 40 hours is our basis. Inside of that, we know that people work 8 hours a day. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week is 40 hours. But guess what? There's 7 days in a week. So we take those 40 hours and we divide it by 7. And we get our first magic number, the daily EFTE divisor of 5.714. And what we do then is we take the number of days in the month and we multiply it by 5.714 to come up with our monthly EFTE divisor. Now, this is for a month that has 31 days. For a month that has 30 or 28 or 29 days, we just multiply this by that number, and it comes up to 171 or 164. And then we take the 5.714 and we multiply it by 365 days, the number of days in a normal year, and it gives us our annual EFTE divisor, 2086. It's a leap year, it's 2092. But these three numbers, 5.714, 177, and 2086, those are the key numbers we need to wrap our heads around. Okay, so how is it useful? Well, guess what? For you that work at a company that has more than one hotel, or even if you have one hotel, let's assume that the front desk worked last year 9,256 hours. Well, how many EFTEs is that? Well, if we do the math and divide it by 2,086, we can see that it's 4.4 EFTEs. And imagine if you had 40 hotels and they all have a front desk. If you could look at a piece of paper and see how many EFTEs you had in every single hotel, and actually even divide the number of EFTEs by the room count, you quickly see who's the most efficient, who's the least efficient. Then you'd ask yourself, why? What are we doing in the good hotel that we can take to the hotels that are performing poorly? And what can we eliminate at the hotels that are performing poorly and replace it with much better practices? So EFTE measures productivity by dividing the hours worked by the divisor, whether it's for a day, a month, or a year. And what it is it's useful to express similar data in a concise format, and it leads to benchmarking and creating a baseline for your business. And obviously, if we can do this for the front office, we can do it for any department. So once we have all of that data, it becomes really rich and really useful. So now we're going to do our first exercise. But before we do, we're going to check in with Carrie and get the response to today's first polling question.
Everyone said that it was payroll.
Payroll. You guys are so smart. No fooling you. Very good. It is payroll, and it's as much, the average in our industry is right around 50%, but for some hotels, it can be 60, 65% of the total revenue is consumed with payroll. If you're down somewhere around 35, 40%, you're doing really well. Okay, EFTE math. So all of you have got that piece of paper, and it looks exactly like this. So what we have here across the top is we have those magic numbers that I was telling you about. EFTE day value, EFTE monthly value, depending on the number of days in the month, and the annual EFTE value. So those are our key three numbers. So in this case, we are going to lay out the scenario. It's the housekeeping department. For a day on January 15th, the housekeeping department worked 222 hours. For the entire month in January, they worked 5,925 hours. For the entire year in 2014, I must update this, they worked 76,000 hours. The first question one is, how many EFTEs for January 15th in the housekeeping department? Well, hint, divide the number of hours worked by 5.71. So if we take 222 and divide it by 5.71, what do we get? We get 38.9. So there was 38.9 EFTEs working in the housekeeping department on January the 15th. The second question is, how many EFTs for the month? Well, hint, divide the number of hours worked for the month, 5925 by 177. Hopefully all of you are doing this right along with me, and you get 33.5 EFTEs. And then the third and final question on the EFTE math is, how many EFTEs for the year were there in the rooms division? Well, hint, divide the hours worked by 2,086. 76,000 hours divided by 2,086 gives us 36.6. So that's how you calculate EFTEs. All you need are your hours, and then to know what the daily divisors are. Okay, moving along, we're going to talk about productivity. Why is it useful to understand and track? Well, in this scenario, if we were building furniture, we would want to know how many hours it takes to make a table, how many hours it takes to make chairs, so that we can properly price these things, so that we can track our productivity. But what about rooms, and what about food and beverage? Well, in rooms, we want to measure the hours per room occupied, and in food and beverage, we want to measure the hours per customer cover served. So in rooms, we take the occupancy and we divide the total hours worked in the rooms area by the number of rooms occupied. In the food and beverage area, we divide the number of customer covers served by the number of hours worked. And why is this the best way to measure productivity? Well, I get this question a lot from people because some of you have labor cost as a percentage, or some of you have, so much labor per dollar of revenue and other measurements. But guess what? This is the best way to measure the productivity because you don't control the price. So great example would be, if we're operating our hotel in February, our revenues and our average rate and our room revenue and our food and beverage revenues would be much, much higher than they are going to be for the month of May. And if we were to divide the labor cost into the sales, our figures would look terrible this month. But this month, if we were dividing the number of hours worked by the number of units of production, we would have a really good shot at keeping relevant to the productivity number we achieved in February. And as the manager or the owner, what do you control? You do not control the prices. You do not control the wage rates. The government controls those. The market controls the prices. So what do you as the manager control? What do you control? You control, you control the schedule. And that's where I want you to focus your attention is scheduling with productivity. So that's where we're going to move to shortly. So first, though, we're going to do the productivity exercise. So here we have the exact same scenario laid out for this housekeeping department in January, but now we have a new piece of information. We not only have the hours worked, we have the rooms occupied. So the first question is, how many hours of work are required to sell one room? Well, it took 350 hours to service 222 rooms, to check them in, to check them out, to keep the hotel clean, to clean the rooms. So what's my productivity? Well, on January 15th, my productivity is 0.634 hours per room occupied. The second question wants us to divide the number of hours worked by the total rooms occupied in January. We sold 9,925 rooms. So hint, divide the two. And what's the productivity for the month of January? It's 0.596. And then the third question is, what is it for the entire year? Wow, I worked 76,000 hours. I sold 140,000 rooms. Well, what's my productivity? My productivity is 0.545. So the fourth question is, which productivity of the three above is the best? Well, the answer is the productivity for the year. Because with productivity, when we're measuring hours per room occupied, the lower the number, the better. So when you're doing it this way, the lower the number, the better. Some people actually do it where they go room sold per hour of work. And it turns it around, and the higher the number you get, the better. It really doesn't matter which way you do it, but I prefer hours per room occupied. It sounds more logical, and a lower number makes more sense to me. Okay, so that's how you do your productivity. So we looked at how to calculate EFTEs. We did that exercise, and we looked at how to calculate productivity. That's all you need to be able to do. That's it. Okay, so polling question. Do you currently use productivity measurements at your hotel? Write yes or no in the chat. And I'll be back in a couple of minutes with Carrie to collect your answers. But what I want to know is if you use these measurements at your hotel, either in daily reporting or in scheduling, are they available somewhere so that if I was Mr. Economist and I wanted to come to your hotel, could I actually tell if you're improving or if you had been improving with your productivity? Like Mr. Drucker says, you can't manage what you can't measure. If you're not recording it, you're not improving. Okay, so write yes or no in the chat. All right, so we're moving on to talk about key business indicators and scheduling with productivity. So KBIs, they are referred to, it's an acronym, it stands for Key Business Indicators. So for the hotel world, there are several labor key business indicators. And again, back to my days when I used to track benchmarking, this is what we tracked. So in the hotel world, some popular hotel labor KBIs are room attendant, hours per room occupied, just for the room attendants. Housekeeping, which is everybody else that works in housekeeping, the people stocking the closets and cleaning the hallways and cleaning the lobbies and public spaces, working in the linen rooms. All of their combined efforts, hours per room occupied. The front desk, the people that work at the front desk, people that work checking people in, checking people out, and taking reservations, hours per room occupied. And then to bring it all together, the total rooms department, hours per room occupied. In food and beverage, we can look at kitchen production, hours per customer cover served for people that work in the kitchen cooking food. Then we can look at cleaning hours per room, hours per customer cover served. Excuse me. That's everyone who works in stewarding, everyone who works to keep the kitchens and dining rooms clean. And then we can look at F&B service. That's everybody who serves those clients, whether they be managers or servers or bussers or hosts, all of those hours combined. And then to pull it all together, total food and beverage, hours per customer cover served. So what you want to first do when you're setting up this system is you want to establish your baseline. Where are you today? And people always ask me, what should my productivity be, David? And I always respond, it really depends on your hotel. Every hotel is different, even if it's exactly the same as the one down the road, other than the piece of land it's sitting on, it's going to be different inside. There'll be things that are different about it. So what you need to do is, one, define your labor buckets. Be consistent. Who is a room attendant? Who's in housekeeping? Who's at the front desk? Figure out what those positions are, set it up so that those position departments and buckets are separate. What you're going to want to do is go back at least a year, if not 2 years, and collect this data. Organize it by month. Get those hours per month for each one of those buckets. From there, you're going to ask yourself, well, where do I need to go to find this data? Typical places are great sources. If you use time clocks, you can run reports and make this really simple. If not, you're going to have to pull sign-in sheets, maybe look at payroll records. You're going to want to make sure you're using the accrual method of accounting because we always pay people after the fact. So if you're looking at the hours in May, for instance, some of those hours won't be paid until June. So you need to be cognizant of what you're looking at. And you look at all the hours of productive work, regular, overtime, and double time. Each one of those is only an hour, just productive hours. So overtime doesn't count as 2, double time doesn't count as 4 or whatever. An hour is an hour is an hour. So the buckets again, guests, room attendants, housekeeping, public spaces, laundry runners, front desk, reception services, including managers. kitchen, all prep positions. Kitchen cleaning, all dishwashing and cleaning, F&B service, all positions and managers. So great checklist for you to be able to set it up, but be consistent. When you're done, this is kind of what it's going to look like, where you've collected the number of hours worked in each month. And we put up 6 months for the year here. But here are the 3 different buckets we have in rooms. Here's the 3 different buckets we have in food and beverage. We total the number of hours in each month, total the number of hours for the year, for this case, 6 months. And then we enter the rooms sold and the covers served. And then we simply divide these numbers, in this case, 729 by 1395, 475 by 1395, 794 by 1395, and it gives us our key business indicators. It gives us the hours per room occupied for all the different buckets. And you can see that each month now has values in it, and that's what you're going to be able to produce. And right off the bat, you're going to see some interesting information. One is that the overall hours per room occupied in this hotel for the year, or in this case, 6 months, is 1.504. And the monthly number, it varies all the way from a really solid performance of 1.421 all the way up to a rather dismal performance of 1.824. You got to ask yourself, and this is real data from a real hotel, from a real client that I worked with last year. You got to ask yourself, why would it be as much as 20% different? Same in food and beverage. Once we get the hours worked, we put the covers in and we can crank out the productivity. And here we see the average is 1.101, and it goes from a low of 0.977 all the way up to a high of 1.278. Again, you got to ask yourself why. But now we know what our benchmark productivity is for this hotel. And again, every hotel is going to be different. Now we want to move to the second part of this, which is beginning to schedule with productivity. So here's the schedule from the same hotel. Here's the schedule for the room attendants. Here's the days in the week. Here's the occupancy that's forecasted for each one of those days in this hotel. And then the same for the housekeeping department. We can see that we have a subtotal of number of hours in both areas along with the total. And then all we do is we divide the number of hours in each of the buckets, the room attendant bucket and the housekeeping bucket, by the occupancy, and it produces our productivity. And guess what? The room attendant is 0.691 and housekeeping is 0.535. Well, hold on a minute. I'm reviewing the schedule before it's published. And I point out to you that actually last April, we managed to do 0.652 and 0.457. You're giving me a schedule that's 0.691 and 0.535. Not quite good enough. What I would like you to do is go back and sharpen your pencil and see where you can tighten things up, because I want you to hit last April's productivity. Month over month, year over year are very comparable productivity measurements. Taking the target for the whole year wouldn't be fair. Taking the best wouldn't be fair. Taking the worst wouldn't be fair. But the same month last year, it has the same weather. It has typically the same holidays. Easter maybe earlier or later, but things kind of mirror themselves year over year. So guess what? Here's the revised schedule, and it's actually after the fact. And we've gone back in and we've put in the actual number of rooms occupied, removed the forecasted. And here is where shifts have been either removed or altered. And we end up with a productivity of 0.649 and 0.449. And looking back on what the target was, 0.652 and 0.457, we beat it in the room attendance department, and we were also beat it in the housekeeping department. So good stuff. Now, you got to ask yourself, well, what is the real result of this? Well, in this case, this housekeeper saved 27 hours on this schedule. But guess what? We didn't ask them to do anything they have not done before. They achieved the same level of productivity last year. So it's not like we're asking them to cut. It's not like we're asking them to, pull a rabbit out of their hat. But the thing is what if we did this every single week? And what if we found 27 hours every single week? Well, 27 hours, 52 weeks, times that $25, that's $35,000 in savings. And that's just from housekeeping. So focus on productivity each week. Review the schedule, review the actual. Know what your targets are and work to improve them. Just like Mr. Drucker said, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And again, I love telling people this, but winning with productivity, it's like playing baseball. And you're probably scratching your head wondering how that could possibly be the case. But look at it this way. With productivity, there's going to be days where you suck. There's going to be Sundays and Mondays where no matter what you do, you won't hit your target. But there's also going to be days like Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays and days when you've got big groups and days when you've got a lot of corporate travelers where it's so easy to make your numbers. You could close your eyes and make your numbers. It's like playing baseball, because in baseball, I don't need to win every inning to win the game. I simply need to win the aggregate of the innings scores. It's the same with productivity. There'll be days when you win, there'll be days when you lose, but what you want to do is focus on the week, focus on the month, focus on the year. If you can do that, you will figure out ways to get better because you're measuring what you do. You'll figure out what's working. Okay, we're going to switch gears and talk. Hello.
Hi, David, it's Carrie. I just got an email question just before you move on.
Yeah.
And she just wanted to confirm that executive housekeeper and supervisor is included in the housekeeping benchmark.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, they would not be part of room attendants. Room attendants is really just for the people who clean rooms. And I know in some hotels, you guys mix things up. So you're going to have to just operate with one bucket. But if you have a clear line between room attendants and everybody else in housekeeping, use those two buckets. Good question. Excellent question. Thank you. All right, financial statements with productivity. So we can take this one step further from the scheduling point of view and actually put it into our financial statements, because when we start doing budgeting and forecasting and comparing and all kinds of stuff, if we have these numbers in our financial statements, this is gold. And it's so easy to do because you already have the hours. You just need to put them into the financials. So here's what it would look like. So in this case, this hotel spent nearly $7 million in payroll for the year. The budget was 6.7. Last year was 6.6. So you can see it's a big increase, $350,000 over last year. And when we look at the revenue per room occupied, it's gone up from 133 to 136. We can then look at the costs per room occupied. But it really doesn't give us the whole picture. Because when we start looking at our payroll has gone from 1.8 million to nearly 2 million. It's gone up $160,000. So it's chewed up quite a bit of that additional revenue. And it kind of looks like we didn't do such a great job. But if we can look at productivity, we can see a completely different picture. And it's going to save a lot of arguments at the property level as to how well we're doing. Because when we look at the productivity, we can see the EFTEs are 35. The budget was 35. And last year we did 34.9. So it's not up very much. But guess what? I need to look at the measurement, my tachometer. This is my speedometer. This is my tachometer. And my productivity is actually 1.45 hours per room occupied compared to a budget of 1.48 and 1.47 last year. I can look at my average rates of pay, 1894, 1950, 1950. But when I look at this productivity number, this takes into account all of the hours worked divided by the number of rooms occupied. And this says that I did a great job. This doesn't say I did a great job. This says I suck with my payroll. But the reason why I suck is not because of scheduling, not because of my effectiveness as a manager. Maybe the government raised the wages. Maybe there was extra taxes to be paid, benefit costs. Who knows? I don't control any of that stuff. I control this part. I control the schedule. So this is really where you want to swing your bat. Okay, so we could even dig deeper if we have this system going, and we can look at the EFTEs in every single area of our operation, as well as the productivity in every single area of our operation. In this hotel, we have the rooms division, but they separate management and hourly. So you can go even further. And that question about where to put the head housekeeper and where to put the housekeeping supervisors, based on how you design your buckets, you could have a bucket for housekeeping hourly and management, front office hourly and management. In a big hotel, it really makes a lot of sense. In smaller operations, it's not going to be so useful. But you can see in this case, there are 5 EFTEs in the rooms department management. And in the hourly, we've got 30 EFTEs compared to 29 and 29 last year, giving us a total of 35 EFTEs, sorry for the swing there, compared to a budget of 35 and 34.9. But again, when I look at my productivity, this is the number that matters the most. 1.45 hours per room occupied, compared to 1.48 and 1.47, I win the game. Okay, so, and again, to make all this happen, all we need to do is record our hours. That's the golden thing we need to be able to do. Okay, so I want to also point out something else with payroll. Wages, supplemental, and benefits. There's always 3 levels. And what I mean by that is, let's say you make a salary of $50,000 a year. Well, there will be supplemental costs on top of that. So $50,000 might be what we pay you, but on top of that, there's going to be payroll taxes. There are going to be things that actually are automatically driven by what we pay you that the hotel has to pay. And then there are another level, what we call benefits. So all the programs that the hotel chooses to participate in, employee benefits, running the cafeteria, various different things. So there's always 3 different levels. So you want to be able to dissect the wages from the supplemental and from the benefits. So in this hotel we were looking at, the payroll was a whopping $6.2 million for the entire hotel. And we had 106 EFTEs, and the average revenue per EFTE was $114,000. The payroll to the total revenue was 51.4%. That compared to 48.2% is very alarming. Then we can take a look at the benefits at 16%, crept up to 17. What we want to be able to see and dig into is this 3-level look so that we can look at what we actually paid in wages. In this case, these 2 lines, salary, overtime, and leased labor. And then below it, all of our supplemental costs, giving us our total supplemental, then our total payroll, and then on top of that, what are our benefit costs for all the different benefit programs, workers' comp, union benefits, Canada Pension Plan, unemployment insurance, employee meals, all that. But it all adds up to $6.2 million in this hotel. So wages were $4.5 million. Supplemental was another 800 grand. And then benefits were another 900,000. So everything ramps off of the hours worked and the wages, but it's really important to remember there's always 3 levels. Okay, polling question. Would you rather have a beer or a Caesar after class today? Write B for beer or C for Caesar in the chat. And then while you're doing that, I'm going to get Carrie to tell us what the last polling results were.
Sure. So the last one about measuring productivity, we had 2 people say they don't know, and this may be because they work in different areas like corporate sales. One person said no, but they will be now. And the rest said yes.
Okay, good stuff. All right, so all those ones that said yes, what I'd like you to look at is exactly how you do measure it and how you can enhance the reporting, because there's a long way you can take this. And I know for a lot of hotels, they capture perhaps minutes per room, and they kind of stop there. But taking it into all the other areas in rooms and food and beverage, it's golden, and it's going to really save you a lot of money. And for those of you that are not doing it and want to do it, you've got a great roadmap here. All right, so do we have results on what people are going to be doing after class today?
I think people really love their Caesars.
Right on. Well, here's a little tidbit for you that they do sell Clamato juice in the United States, but if anybody's ever bought it and made a Caesar down here, it tastes different. It's different. It's not Mott's. It's some other company. It's kind of close, but anytime I get back to Canada, I always bring some back with me, or anytime someone's coming to visit me, they ask me what I want. It's Clamato juice. So with that, I'm going to segue into Dave's top 10 list. So you're all familiar with David Letterman, or most of you should be anyways. He hasn't been on TV in a few years, but he was a late night king for a long time, and he always did his top 10 list. So I thought, well, I'm going to do a top 10 productivity killers inside of your hotel. So here we go. Number 10, being a perfectionist. If you're a perfectionist and you can't release something, or you can't move on something till you think it's absolutely perfect, the hotel business is not the right place for you. Being good enough, getting it done, moving on is where you want to be. It doesn't mean that it's okay to miss something, but if you're frozen because you're not 100% sure it's perfect, you're going to have a miserable time in the hotel world. Good enough has got to be your mantra. Number 9, working without a routine. Much has been written about this. I even wrote a blog called The Power of a Routine. If you are interested in reading it, just Google it or go to my website and search for it. You'll find it in there. But without a solid routine to follow every single day where you can get the stuff done, call it the administrative stuff or the paperwork or the things you need to get done. If you don't have a routine mapped out to be able to lock that in every single day, then your day gets away from you. And all of a sudden you say, I'm drowning, I'm underwater, we're inundated, I'm in the soup, whatever you call it. It isn't because you're so busy, it's because you don't have the discipline to work with a routine. No matter what you do inside of our business, without a routine, you're killing your productivity. So look around you and look at the people that work for you. Routine, they need to have a routine. What's the routine? Teach them their routines. Review their routines with them. Become fascinated with routine. All right, productivity killer number 8. Not asking and giving rewards for room credits. This is going to become even more popular and prevalent in a post-COVID world, in our hotel world. But if you're not giving your clients a reward for leaving their room dirty for a night or two while they're there, you're missing a great opportunity to improve productivity. And you can give them anything as you want as a reward. Some hotels offer free cocktails, some hotels offer points, some hotels offer breakfast or free bottled water, whatever. Use your imagination. As long as it doesn't cost any more than, I would say 20 or 30% of what the labor you're giving up to not clean that room and the expenses that you're not incurring. And I know myself, when I go to a hotel, if I'm there for a couple or 3 days, I don't want anybody in my room. I'm not a messy person. I can pull up the sheets. I can put the towel over the back of the door. Maybe I put my garbage out to get it emptied, but I don't want people in. So give them the option. It will improve your productivity. Number 7, not capturing do not disturb credits. So as many as 10% of your current guests are just like me. They don't want people cleaning the room. And if nobody offers me anything, all I do is hang the sign and just don't let people in my room. Hopefully they respect it. But if you're not capturing these credits, and if you're not doubling back on the housekeeping people to make sure that if they've got 2 of these people in their section that they actually get 2 more rooms to clean, then you're missing productivity. Capture that. Number 6, not using an up-to-date and accurate daily forecast. So just like our scenario when we talked about scheduling, you've got to look at your payroll every single day. And if you do a schedule, right now it's Wednesday, if you're doing the schedule for next week and you're releasing it tomorrow and you don't update it absolutely every day, you're missing a huge amount of productivity. You've got to be able to leverage that and make sure that as things change in the week, you change the schedule. All right, number 5, scheduling based on plus, not minus. So a housekeeper that I worked with a long time ago taught me this. And what she would do is if she needed 20 room attendants to turn the house tomorrow, she'd schedule 18 or 19. And rather than scheduling 20 or 21 or 22 to cover her backside. And the reason she did that is because she knew that 19 times out of 20, things were going to happen inside of her day where she got do not disturb credits, that people actually were able to clean rooms faster in their sections, or people could work together, or she would always find creative ways to get her housekeeping staff and their supervisors to push the envelope. So schedule based on minus, not plus. Number 4, lack of effective communication, productivity killer. If people don't know what's going on inside of your hotel, if they don't know what the latest forecast is, if they don't know what the characteristics of the group that's going to be staying with you this week are, if they don't know what events that group has and what movements they have and what time they'll be arriving and departing, where the VIPs are, if they don't know all of that stuff, if you don't have regular morning meetings and lineups, productivity suffers. Have effective communication. Number 3, extra breaks for snacks, smokes in the bathroom. So if you're not keeping track of what people are up to and curtailing these activities, they'll get away from you. And I can call myself out here because I worked in service for the first 10 years of my career, and I was a smoker. And I can tell you, I would take 3, 4, 5, 6 breaks a day sometimes to go have a cigarette. And then I'd go to the bathroom, and I wasn't so much into snacking or whatever, but you can't let this happen. If you do, you're going to really suffer from a productivity point of view. Create proper rules, create things that you can enforce, and you don't have to be draconian about it, but people have their break time and people have their lunch breaks, and they can go do what they need then. Really emphasize that in your training and your orientation, and it will make a huge difference on your productivity. Okay, number 2, we're getting almost to the top of the list. Not tracking and scheduling with productivity measures. If you're doing your schedules and you're not tracking productivity and approving that schedule based on the target, you're missing the boat. If you're not following up and reviewing the actual results with each one of your department managers after the fact to see that they were able to be successful and find out if they weren't, why, and help them realize how important this system is, your number 1 expense is going to be much higher than it needs to be. Schedule and track productivity. Okay, drum roll. The number 1 productivity killer inside of your hotel is smartphones, email, texts, and social media. So I don't need to tell you, everybody in the world has at least one phone on them, sometimes 2 or 3, and they're on them all the time. And it's something that really I have no solid recommendations on what you can do to curtail this inside of your hotel, other than you've got to come up with policies that you can verbalize and enforce and put in writing with people and make it part of, again, their orientation and ongoing training, that what is acceptable with the phone and what isn't. So with that, I'm going to open it up for your questions on today's webinar content. Don't be shy.
There was one question that came in, David.
Okay.
Here, I'll show myself. With COVID, the cleaning procedures will affect the productivity and forecasting. And how do you think this will affect labor and cost?
Well, it's definitely something that is a great question. And I would say two things. One is we've got to see how it plays out, because I think there will be some give and some take. And I think the give will be in, providing more cleaning and more time inside of the room. I think the take will be to remove as many things that are, going to be surfaces or things that germs are going to be able to be found on. I don't know the answer. My sense is that there will be give and take, and that over a period of time things will settle down in such a way that we've got smarter processes, better cleaning, and the two should hopefully equal the same kind of productivity. I also think that guests are going to be more and more interested in not having anybody in their room while they're there. And we've got to figure out ways to give them the service that they want, but also respect their preferences and their request for privacy. And being able to perhaps engineer the reservation so that we know whether or not they want their room cleaned even before they get there. And maybe we put them in different rooms because of it. And maybe those rooms have, an extra towel or a process where they can get their garbage switched out every day and it be touchless, things like that, where we're really thinking about what our guests want.
Okay. I did have one other question, but you may have addressed it already, but what can we do to encourage more productivity? And I know you did your top 10 list, but I guess, is there an example that you can give or something really cool that somebody did within an organization to increase productivity?
Yeah, the client that kind of spurred me on to put this presentation together, he owns 3 hotels in Massachusetts, and he went through the trouble of tracking and figuring out what his baselines were. And then he set up with his managers in those 3 different hotels the targets, and then he introduced the system for scheduling. And it took a few weeks to get, every week we do it, we get a little better, we get a little smarter. And he's been doing it now for a year and a half. And last year, he managed to improve his productivity by over 12% in his 3 hotels combined. One hotel was as high as 15, and one hotel was as low as, I think, 11%. But that was a huge win for him. And, it was, in reflection, all of the managers were very positive about it because, again, the data is so important to be able to show people, because people may come back to you and go, well, hold on, how come we have to do this and we have to do that, or we're doing things differently? Maybe you're asking people to do something that appears like you're asking them to do more work or whatever. But if you can show them that that's not the case, that here's the number of units of sales and the number of units of hours, then it's really a powerful thing to do. And what he also did, which I think was really smart, is he made it one of the management incentive plan targets for those 3 hotels. So the managers inside of the hotel actually shared in the payroll savings. So he set targets based on what he knew the productivity was and what he wanted it to be. And then he gave a financial target, bonus promise, and delivered on it for those managers inside of those hotels. And it wasn't just the GM, it was, the housekeeping manager, the front office manager. And they got a substantial portion of what he saved, I think almost as much as 30%. So I think he saved, between his 3 hotels and 15% of his rooms labor is what he was concentrating on. He saved over $100,000, and they got really good bonuses. So that's what you got to do, is figure out how to get your team interested and involved in it. And there's 2 ways to do that. One is reward them, but the other way is educate them and give them the tools so that they understand what they're doing. Hope that helps.
Great. And it's 2:00, and that was our last question. So,
Oh my. Well, remember, there's lots of stuff on my website. If you want any of this from me, just send me an email. It'd be my pleasure to send it to you. I send people this stuff every day all over the world. So put your name in there and I'll send it to you too. And don't forget to go to my website, cough up your email address. I don't spam you or anything like that, but you'll get a copy of my guidebook, The 7 Secrets, and then you'll get my weekly blogs. And with that, I want to say thank you.
yes, thank you.
Talk
See
to
you
you
next
next week.
Bye.